Radial balance. Radial balance is created when the elements of art are balanced around a central point. In this piece of art, this is the central point. Here are a few other examples. Hi everyone, today we are going to be learning about radial balance, and this may be familiar to you as we usually talk about this about once a year. But I want to remind you that radial balance is when something is balanced coming out from the center. And so one easy way to remember this is that radial balance is like the rays of a sun. So I'll show you a little example. So here, if I think of a sun, you usually have the rays coming out kind of balanced, right? And so that is an example of radial balance. In our case, we are not going to be making suns, but we are going to be making something else that is radial balanced, which is a snowflake. So the cool thing about this project is there's going to be a ton of choice for you. And so I'm going to show you how we can show radial balance, and then I'm going to show you a whole bunch of different ways that you could make a project showing radial balance. So your job for this is to show radial balance, but how you do that is going to be completely up to you. So the first thing that I am going to do is I am going to start by, just like I said, going over radial balance. So I'm going to start by making a dot on my paper. And one thing I really like to use when I'm doing radial balance is a ruler, and the reason for that is because I like to use that to help make my lines a little bit more precise and also make sure that things are about the same length on every side. For example, here I know I'm leaving 2 inches from the dot to the top, so I can do 2 inches from the dot to the bottom. And I can repeat that when I go sideways. Now, some people like to make 8-armed snowflakes and others like to do 6. I'm going to do 8 for this example, but it is up to you. As long as it's radial balanced out from the middle, that is fine with me. And now I'm going to just make my dot a little bigger there since that line got a little above. Okay. Now, the next thing that we are going to do is anything that we do on one line, we're going to repeat on the others, okay? And if I add new elements, I'm going to also continue to repeat. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go long line, short line, long line. So in this section, I will do the same thing. Long line, short line, long line. Long line, short line, long line. Long line, short line, long line. All right, and so you can see that that is still balanced. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to add other things onto my snowflake here. So one thing that's popular are little circles. Another popular one is a V shape. Or you could even do an arrow, which is kind of the opposite of the V, right? So I'm gonna make that on my longer lines in here. Another cool thing that you can do is you can start to connect different sections together. So for example, I'm going to connect this V down to these marks. And you can see that that kind of created these little diamond shapes in there, right? So if I wanted to, I could even make those stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to add some V's kind of coming out here. So the point of this, I don't want you to copy exactly what I'm doing, but the point of what I'm trying to show you is that anything we do on one side, we're going to repeat on all of the sides of our project. That is how we achieve that radial balance that we're learning about. Okay, and then you can also fill things in other ways too, right? Like if I wanted to, I could maybe add some straight lines, etc. to fill things in. Maybe I decide I'm going to add some more onto these lines. Now, your snowflake doesn't have to be perfect, just try your best, and you can decide when you want to stop. So I might add just a little bit more coming out of these, but then I think that this one could be done. So that is the idea of radial balance, is that it's going to be repeating all the way around a central point. Now, I want to show you some other ways that you could show radial balance in your art. The first thing I'm going to show you is how to make a cut radial balance snowflake. And so what we're going to do is I'm starting with a rectangular piece of paper because I know that many of you might have that kind of paper at home. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a corner of it and we're going to pull it over until it matches up with the top edge there, okay? And we're going to try and fold it just right so that it matches up. And you'll see that it leaves this long rectangle sticking off on the end. And that is what we want to see before we crease it. So we're going to try and make that as straight as we can so that we can now see that long rectangle. And the next thing we're going to do is we are going to cut that long rectangle off. Okay, now that I have that cut off, if I open this back up, you're going to see that I have a square piece of paper, or a diamond, I guess, if I turn it that way, which is what we want to make a snowflake. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this, and I'm going to fold it the opposite way and crease again. So a good way to crease is to use one hand to hold it against the table, use the other one to slide across and get a nice crease there. All right, you can see that it looks like a kite now, right? Okay, so now I'm gonna fold it back both ways. So I fold it in half, now I fold it into what are called quarters. And then I'm gonna fold this triangle in half. So if you think of that as kind of a pyramid shape almost, right? I'm going to fold that again here. And the cool thing with this is you can really fold it as many times as you want to. However, the thicker it gets, the harder it's going to be to cut. And so I wouldn't recommend folding it too many times because you don't want it to get too crazy for cutting. So I think I'm gonna fold it just one more time here. And then I'm going to stop. Now, a key thing for this is that when you're cutting, you want to be careful on sides that show folds, okay? You never want to cut all the way across a side that has a fold. And so when you're doing this, it's okay if you go a little crazy with cutting some lines and some shapes in, but we don't want to cut all the way along a fold side because those folds are what's going to hold our shape together. And so I'm gonna start cutting things in here. And I like to just kind of play with these when I'm doing this. I kind of like to just have fun with it and then see what I get when I open it up. It's kind of like a surprise. So it is up to you, but be very careful when you're cutting. We wanna make sure that we don't end up cutting our fingers. So we wanna just make sure that we're really paying attention when we are cutting. This isn't a good job to do while you're talking to someone because you want to be able to focus on what you're cutting. You can also see that I'm getting lots of scraps on my table. If you have a garbage can nearby, I really recommend cutting over a garbage can. Otherwise, doing what I'm doing here and keeping the scraps on the table so that you can just scoop them into your hand and throw them in the garbage, that is also a good way to go with this. So I made some kind of lines in there. Now I'm just gonna cut some little triangle here. It's really up to you. You really can't go wrong with this cutting. It's as long as you don't cut all the way up a fold side, just be creative and have some fun with it and see what you come up with in the end. Kind of cool to see when you open it all up what it's gonna look like. So I'm gonna do one last cut here, and then I think I am ready to open up my snowflake. So I'm gonna get my scraps kind of all off and away here, off to the side. And then I'm going to open up my snowflake. So start unfolding, and you can kind of see how that radial balance is starting to show, right? We're starting to see how things are going to be balanced out from that middle point. And then I'm going to open again. So you have to be really careful as you're opening. Make sure you find the sides that are open. Don't tug on things or you might end up ripping your snowflake. And then I can open it one last time and you can see my final snowflake here, okay? So that was a fun way to do that. So this is another option for you. Now you can also make a snowflake by starting with a circle paper, or you can trim the edges of it as you're cutting to try and make it more circular. It is up to you to decide, but I kind of like just playing around, like I said, and seeing what I end up with in the end. So that is another example of how you can show radial balance, and you can see that everything again is coming out from a central point, right? Everything is repeating, so that is a good example. Another thing you can do, and something that I really enjoy doing, is to start these with a white crayon and then use watercolor over the top. So you can start with pencil if you want to first for this, but I really like to just start with the crayon. I think it's kind of fun that way. So again, I'm going to try and make sure that I'm repeating everything. It's a little bit harder this way because you can't see everything that you're doing perfectly. So you have to kind of really think about what you're doing. You might need to hold your paper up, try and see it in different light to make sure that you know where you're at. and keep going. But this can be really, really fun. I think this is kind of cool, kind of a mystery too when you get to the final step. And then for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be coloring, and you'll see that as I start going over it with my marker, you can start seeing those little crayon lines appear from where I made my snowflakes. Something I really like to do when I do this is blend colors, and so I'm going to take some different blues and blend them in, maybe some green or purple even. That'll help make the snowflake stand out, and also just kind of add some nice variety into the project, not having just one variation of the blue. So I added some blue, and now I think I'm going to go in and add some purple to it, make it a little bit interesting. You can see where the purple is overlapping the blue. I'm also getting a kind of blue-violet color. And I think this is looking pretty good already. I can see that snowflake really coming through, showing the radial balance that we're talking about. But I also wanted to remind you that anytime you use marker, you can also blend it with a paintbrush and water. So I'm gonna actually go over this with some water on my paintbrush, and that'll help these colors blend even better. This has become one of my favorite methods, using markers and water together to get kind of that blended watercolor effect. The other nice thing about this is if any of your marker did stick to your crayon, the water kind of washes that away. And you can see over here where it's already starting to really blend the colors together. Now you don't want to get your paper too wet. You want to try and go over each area just once, maybe twice, so that it gets some nice water to blend with, but doesn't get too drenched. On the edges, you can also try and pull some of your ink right over to the side of your paper. And so I would let this dry, but you can see there already how that is starting to blend together and show the snowflake. Another option, so this is similar to the cut snowflake, but another option is to use colored paper to make your cut snowflake. So again, I'm gonna fold it in half here. And this time I think I'm just gonna fold it twice. So I've got my square here, I'm gonna fold into a triangle. Then I'm gonna fold it again. And this time I have one side that only has open edges. The other two sides both contain folds. So I know that this side, since it has all open edges, is a side that I can cut. So I'm gonna cut that in kind of a rounded, wavy design. And we'll see what that ends up looking like. Also adding kind of a zigzag line here. Next to that, I'm going to do a little bit of a triangle. So again, on these fold sides, I'm making sure that I'm not cutting everything off. As a reminder, you also might want to be cutting these over a garbage can if you have one nearby. Otherwise, like I said, making sure that you scoop your scraps into your hand when it's cleanup time. Your parents will appreciate that, or your guardians, or whoever you live with will appreciate you cleaning these up. And then in the end here, I'm gonna just make another little. Okay, so now again, I'm gonna open this up, but it just makes a little bit of a difference having that with the colored paper instead. I've also seen people do this using wrapping paper to make cut snowflakes, so that's kind of a fun way to do it as well. So that's another option for you for this project. So these options that I've given you are just a few of the different ways that you can show radial balance. I really want you to go crazy and have some fun with this. Figure out what you can do. You could hang snowflakes in your window. You could make things, even using like glue or glitter or salt or different things like that as well. There are lots of different materials you might have in your home. So have fun. Make sure you talk to a grown-up before you use any new materials. And I look forward to seeing all of your radial art. Thanks, everyone.
As a reminder, you have complete material choice for this project. Talk to your grown-ups about what materials you'd like to use and be creative. You also have paper size and style choice for this project. You can use anything from regular paper to tissue paper, wrapping paper, or maybe even make something that's balanced that's not on paper at all. It's completely up to you and your grown-ups to decide. Have fun creating your radial art.